because you may have not noticed there's a rainbow theme today. This is the last Sunday in Pride Month. And I am told that the younger folks in the LGBT community are decidedly anti-rainbow. But there are a lot of us who still remember a time when people who loved differently were outcasts and they were hated. A time when people who didn't fit the norm could expect to be victims of violence. A time when more people, died to live the way they were made. And to those coming from that time, that rainbow flag of Harvey Milk meant hope and acceptance, the possibility of a brighter, safer future. So today we shall rainbow as brightly as any sun could in honor of those who paved the way and in hope for a brighter, more loving future where everyone in the world will finally recognize that we are one with no exclusion. Now, before I go any further, I want to remind you all here and everyone listening or watching online that next Sunday, that is July 6th, Ginger Coyle will be here all the way from the East Coast. And I cannot stress this enough, she is really, truly an incredible artist. I met her at the Affiliated New Thought Network conference last October, and I'm very excited I get to go again this October, woohoo! But I met her at the conference last year, and I went to her workshop, and I was really, really amazed by her story and how she got to where she is. It's really very fascinating. But when the workshop ended, and this was the last day of the conference, when the workshop ended and everybody left the room, I saw her and her table full of shirts and jewelry and buttons and CDs, and she walked over and started packing it up, and I went, oh, that will not do. So I walked over and I started helping, and a friendship was forged. So when she reached out to me, what about 3 weeks ago? Not 3 weeks ago, huh? When she reached out to me to tell me that she was coming, because I have to tell you, I told her then, I said, when you're on the West Coast, come by, because singing in this tower is a life-changing experience. And those of you who've done communion, which is today, by the way, those of you who've done that up here know that we sing. So when she said she was coming and offered to perform, I said, yes, please. And not only will she be here performing during the service, but she will be back in the evening. So bring friends. You're not going to get this chance again, because the odds of her being able to make her way all the way here, they're narrow, right? So again, Ginger is next week. Communion is today. If you want to participate, there are no requirements. You just come up front and hang out while we change your clothes. And then we come up and we commune. And it's very lovely. And now I'll move to today's subject. We have a brand new set of talks. Those of you who know me, you're aware that I always seem to get a set of 5 talks. They just drop into my mind in a really specific order, kind of fully formed, right? It's like someone uploads a file that says, here's what you're going to do next. And then I do 5 talks on each one of those 5 subjects. And I always stick to those subjects and that format unquestioningly, which has served us all really well so far. Even when the order of the subject seems to be a little bit disjointed, I find that when I get there, somehow there's something really major happening in the world or in our community, which is directly linked to what I'm supposed to be teaching in that order. So I follow the format. But then we ended last week's series on trust. And when I looked into my mental bag of tricks, which I will tell you is elusive, but I looked in there for the next topic that I knew it had been set in there months ago. I've known this whole time, and it was set there by a mind so much greater than my own. But when I looked in there, I found topic 3 to be missing entirely. I had no idea. I knew that we were supposed to do hope, and then trust, and then something, followed by gratitude, and then surrender. And so I waited, and I waited, and I listened to the world around me for cues and guidance, and I still found myself lacking. Until it dawned on me that one of the things that I hear most frequently from people who come to me is the question of truth. How do you know there's a God? What's really real in my life? What's real in the world? What's real in my beliefs? What is the truth behind it all? Is there a truth even? So I thought, all right, I got it. That has to be the new topic. It has to be truth. And as soon as I said that out loud to my husband and cute little Mona up there, as soon as I made peace with that change and I started to open to direction around that idea, that old topic that went missing, it came right back, like right then. And because everything played out that way, I have to assume that I am supposed to address truth and faith together. And up until yesterday afternoon, I had no idea where to begin, much less how to do 5 whole talks on those ideas and still pack a punch. Because that, when it comes down to it, packing a punch is what matters up here. I could put together a bunch of pretty words and quote a bunch of people who would inspire, and you can go home thinking, well, wasn't that lovely? And to many ministers, that would be a job well done. Do you all remember Church Lady? Dana, well, isn't that special? To many ministers, those pretty words, and isn't that special, would be enough. That would be a job well done. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I am not like most people. The talks that I give, yes, they can be wordy, and I know that the words frequently have more syllables than some folks are comfortable with. And I can appreciate that they may sometimes get a little boring, but it's really important to me to follow where I'm led. And where I'm led is to dig as deep as I can when the universe hands me the shovel, and then I give you all the treasure that I find. I feel like the moment that I stop listening and digging is the moment I forget how to listen to that still small voice. And I rather like that voice that comes up. But how to tackle truth and faith. Faith I had figured out to a certain degree, because I've had this conversation, I know with a handful of you at least, throughout the last few years, that to me, faith is a statement of, I believe in you, and you are telling me this is true, so I have faith that it's probably true. Okay, and belief is, okay, I have seen some evidence, so I know something bigger is behind it all. But I am not completely convinced that it knows about me and my life. But knowing is that idea, right? It is that unshakable, unquestionable, all-encompassing knowledge that there absolutely is a divine force behind it all. And that divine force is called by many names, by many people of many different faiths, but it's all the same. And it's always moving everything in the world toward a greater expression and experience of love. no matter what the surface level evidence might appear to be to the contrary. And that is where I'd like us all to be by the end of these 5 talks. But if you were counting, that progression from faith to knowing was 3 steps, which isn't 5. I don't number well, but I'm pretty sure 3 isn't 5. Am I right? Okay. I committed to delivering 5, so I pondered, and again, I waited, and I entertained several ideas, but none of them were really earth-shaking. And usually I have some kind of big inspiration, not this time. And then I came to do a memorial yesterday, and all at once it came to me. What happens before faith? Faith says that there's a platform to stand upon. Okay, it's something to hold everything else up. But what happens when you just plain, you don't know? What happens if you want to believe, but you aren't sure that there actually is anything real behind all the words everyone says? What is the truth of that? So today we start where so many hearts live quietly, in that space between doubt and hope, that space where the mind asks, is any of this even real? That's where we begin, not with answers, but with better questions. How many of you believed in God unquestioningly right out of the starting gate? Okay, and when I say believed, I mean really fully believed what you were told. Okay, because as a child, I wasn't sure that I did. I believed in a great many things. I believed that my toys could secretly move when I wasn't looking, and that they could hear me, and that usually they loved me, but sometimes not so much. But some man on a cloud who could see everything that happens in the world and knows everything happening within every person all the time, I couldn't believe that. That was Santa's job. And Santa seemed a lot more real to me. I had evidence of Santa every December. What was the evidence of this God guy? I can remember sitting here in the sanctuary as a small child, right about back there. I don't know why they had the big kids in the front and the little ones in the back, but it was what it was. And I was sitting right about there. And I was a Barnhart student at the time, the school over here. And I remember sitting here listening to Dr. Stevens. It's Margaret Stevens, who was the minister here for a very long time. During morning chapel, we had to go every single morning. She was a fantastic storyteller. As an adult now, I can appreciate it so much more than I did as a child, because maybe you haven't noticed, but my attention span, it isn't so much a span as it is a spurt. I have always had moments of focus interlaced with many random moments of wonder and silliness. And that was as true for the child in me as it is for the adult standing before you. So I only remember snippets of Margaret's stories, largely because the moment she would say, God loves you, my mind would start asking questions. And those questions were always louder than the rest of her story. But wait, there's more. I distinctly remember that when she'd talk about Jesus, that raised even more questions. She talked about how he loves all of the little children, how he's always with us, right beside us, guiding us, and how he knows the secrets of our hearts. And that yanked the needle right off of my record. Now, to appreciate this fully, I should tell you that I was a child of the 70s and 80s. I was born in 74. And you might remember there was an announcement that used to come on the TV at 10 o'clock every night that said, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? We had all sorts of warnings about stranger danger, and not as much supervision as the kids these days get. What was the rule? You come in when the lights turn on, yeah? So, again, I had a really vivid imagination. So when Margaret says that this Jesus guy is with me all the time, knows my secrets and loves me, my little self is creeped right out. I believed a great many things, and I remember absolutely loving when Margaret would lead us in a meditation. And she would teach us how to fill the room. First ourselves, right? She'd teach us how to fill ourselves, and then the room, and then the world with this beautiful white light. And for some reason, I could focus when she said that. But the rest of it, not as much. I knew that that light was real, but the old guy on a cloud and the creepy Jesus guy, I didn't want to look at that. And so began my journey into faith. I didn't know what I believed, but everyone I knew believed in something. So I wanted to believe. And I spent a lot of time going to different churches with friends whenever I could. And I quickly learned not to ask questions. I desperately wanted to find something that I could believe that didn't make me want to say, can you hold up there for a minute? How can that be true when you just said? And that happened a lot. And when I didn't find that at any of those churches my friends went to, I started reading all kinds of books from different belief systems. And I did it really mindfully. I wanted to find the threads of commonality that wove through all of them. Because I believed those things, those threads that you could find throughout all of these texts, they had to be the truth. And it was in seeking and finding these threads that I found that the truth was waiting right here for me where it all began. And I discovered that the creepy Jesus guy is the master teacher and the way shower whose footsteps I strive real hard to follow in. But some of you may not be so clear on what that truth is. Some of you may hope strongly that there's something, but you may have a tough time putting your finger on just exactly what that is. Not in your own words, you have an idea, a picture. But to articulate it, that's a challenge. Or maybe there are some people in your lives who kind of pale and they run as soon as you mention anything, even hinting at faith. Anybody know anyone like that who just goes, the moment you say, yeah, I think we all have seen that. So let's begin to prove the case for faith. Let's begin to open the linear, scientific, evidence-based thinkers to the idea that science and faith are two sides of the same coin. Let's begin to reveal that without a higher power behind it all, there would be no facts or scientific laws to explain things. So let us begin there with science. In his book, The Universe in a Nutshell, Stephen Hawking wrote, in 1988, when A Brief History of Time was first published, the ultimate theory of everything seemed to be just over the horizon. How has that situation changed since then? Are we any closer to our goal? We have advanced a long way since then, but it is an ongoing journey still, and the end is not yet in sight. According to the old saying, it is better to travel hopefully than to arrive. Our quest for discovery fuels our creativity in all fields, not just science. If we reached the end of the line, the human spirit would shrivel and die, but I don't think we will ever stand still. We shall increase in complexity, if not in depth, and shall always be the center of an expanding horizon of possibilities. Stephen Hawking, recognized by many, many people as one of the greatest scientific minds that the world has ever known, he always used the idea of God as a metaphor. He was often quoted as saying there is no spirit, no soul, no afterlife, and so we must make the most of this one life all we can. And while I absolutely agree that we must make the most of this life, I disagree with everything beyond that. How many here have seen or experienced some sort of personal evidence that a soul goes on after the body dies? Yeah, many. Now, I mentioned that I did a memorial yesterday. Well, last week, I met with some of the family members so that I could get to know the person that we were celebrating. And as they sat in my office, they spoke of how he was always joking and playing pranks. And as they were talking, the computer on my desk in there, it made that chime sound that happens when you have Outlook open and a notification comes in, it goes ding. Okay, that sound came up and I ignored it. And then it happened again and I ignored it. And then it happened a third time. So I reached over to those speakers and it turned them all the way off, all the way to the click, right? So there was no power going to them. And a few seconds later, it happened again and we all stopped talking. And I said, "You saw me turn that off, right?" And I picked up the speaker and I showed it to them. The light was off. They all nodded. Their eyes were huge. And so then I logged into the computer and I showed them the screen. "Look," I said, "Outlook isn't even open. I don't like using Outlook. The only tab that was open on that screen was Microsoft Word." And that absolutely would have been evidence enough for everyone in the room, I think. That was one heck of a prank he pulled. But see, it got better. Because a little while later, they had told me, the memorial is Saturday, but in my head, the 28th was a Friday, and I don't know why, but that's what it was. And so I turned to open Outlook so I could kind of cross-check it. And when I clicked the icon, Outlook didn't open. What came up was a pop-up that said invalid file path. Outlook couldn't open. For that family, that was proof. I wish Stephen Hawking had been there to explain that. Because the truth is, more of us have seen some evidence that there is more life than the body. And for that reason alone, one should seek proof of what that more to life is. David R. Hawkins is known as a bodhisattva. In I can't say it, Mahayana. I have to break it apart with dashes next time because I see the word, but it needs to be separated. Mahayana Buddhism. What this means, bodhisattva means a person who is able to reach nirvana, but who chooses to stay here to help us in order to save the suffering from us. And he was as scientific as he is spiritual. He set out to show the world evidence of the more in the world and the universe which our human eyes can't see. He sought to prove unequivocally that love is the greatest power in the universe, and to a large degree, he did exactly that. He provided lots of evidence which is easily refutable, because his method was entirely manual and metaphysical, based in kinesiology. That is the idea that the body can serve as a conduit for universal truths. He considered consciousness itself a non-linear field that could be tapped into beyond space and time, and he trusted that with clear intention, ego detachment, and humility, muscle testing could access universal knowing. right? Do you know what I mean when I say muscle testing? So, for example, you pick up a food and you say, is this good for me? And your body leans towards it. That's a yes. And if your body does this, it's a no. That was his foundation. And the degree of movement within the body, the degree of strength within resistance was the measurement confirming what he was seeking. But I see that people being people, things could easily be manipulated. The only firm, hard evidence that I can offer is that science, in all of its incredible discoveries, has not yet been able to fully explain everything. Theories have been provided, yet remain unproven. Does lack of scientific proof against God prove God? No. But it does not prove God either. So let's look together at some of the most compelling evidence we do have. Not for a specific doctrine or religion, but for something beyond the physical. Something that acts like love, like intelligence, like divine order, because once someone begins to see that, it becomes much harder not to believe in God. My first argument is that consciousness cannot be explained by matter alone. This is evident. No neuroscientist has ever found the source of consciousness in the brain. We can map brain activity, but we cannot explain why subjective experience exists. Even Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of DNA, he admitted that we don't know why matter produces mind. So what if consciousness is not a product of matter, but the origin of matter? Max Planck, founder of quantum theory, he said, this is big, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. David Chalmers is a professor of philosophy and neuroscience at New York University, and he's the co-director for New York University's Center for Mind, Brain, and Consciousness. He said, consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, like space, time, and gravity. My second argument lies in the fine-tuning of the universe, the gravitational constant. The electromagnetic force, strong and weak nuclear forces, they're all precisely balanced. Change them by even one part in a googol, and atoms wouldn't form. Stars wouldn't burn. Life wouldn't exist. And when I say Google, I am not talking about a tech company. I'm talking about a googol, which is spelled G-O-O-G-O-L. It is a 1 followed by 60 zeros. So that's what I thought, but you know what? When I looked it up, because that's what I thought, 600 zeros. But you know what? You know what Google says about Google? It says it's 60, and I went, no, that isn't right, because I read a book called Can You Count to a Google? So Google was wrong about Google. Oh, I love that. So think about that. These laws, these constants, you change them by even 1 out of 600 other zeros, and it all goes haywire. It all goes off the rails. Renowned physicists like Paul Davies and Sir Roger Penrose, they have openly acknowledged the staggering improbability of a life-permitting universe by chaos. If this is all random, Why is it so exquisitely, unfathomably perfect for life? You may argue that maybe we're just lucky, or maybe there are infinite universes, and that's absolutely possible. But is it more likely than this universe being designed by a mind that wants us here? My third argument for God is the countless accounts of near-death experiences and consistent accounts of love. Tens of thousands of documented near-death experiences all include encounters with the light, feelings of overwhelming unconditional love, and a sense of oneness with all things. Tens of thousands all over the planet and throughout centuries. And many of those who had a positive experience also speak of a life review with a focus not on success, but on how much love they gave. And further, there are thousands of near-death experiencers who have reported details that they couldn't have known while clinically dead. Things that their neurosurgeon said, or things that family members were doing miles and miles away in that very moment. And here is one with some scientific proof beyond its veracity. Harvard neurosurgeon Dr. Eben Alexander had a near-death experience while his brain was measurably, scientifically, with clear technological evidence, non-functional. His brain showed zero activity. And he went on to write a best-selling book called Proof of Heaven about what was happening when science said his brain wasn't doing anything. So if consciousness dies with the brain, how do so many describe what happened after brain death with such profound, loving consistency? Now to argument 4, there is a universal pattern of love across cultures. It is evident that the golden rule appears in every major religion. In Christianity, it's found in the Gospels of Matthew 7:12 and Luke 6:31. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. From the Buddhist Udana 518, this was recorded in the 6th century BC, predating Jesus. Whatever is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others. In the Jainist Mahavira, this again, 6th century BC, in happiness and sorrow, in joy and pain, we should consider every creature as we consider ourselves. And here's one earlier still, Confucianism. In the 5th century BC, this is from Analects 15:23. Do not do to others what you do not want them to do to you. 16th century BC, in Judaism, it appears as, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. This is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. Hinduism, this is the sum of duty. Do not unto others that which would cause you pain if done to you. From Islam, the Prophet Hadith 13 in the 7th century, none of you will believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Love is the highest moral ideal across time and civilization. Not power, not knowledge, not success. If love is just a human invention, why does every culture, every mystic, every awakened soul name it as the highest truth? And my last argument for God is the mystery of DNA and intention in nature. DNA is digital code. More complex than any man-made language, it stores information, replicates, corrects errors, functioning like a self-repairing software system. No known natural law explains how purely random processes produced this complexity. When we, ordinary people living in this day and age, when we see a code, we assume there's a coder, right? So why not here? Why not with DNA? I am not asking you to believe in a bearded man in the sky. I'm inviting you to consider that there is intelligence woven into the cosmos. There is order where there could have been chaos. There is beauty and consciousness and love when nothing scientifically apparent demanded they exist. And if all of that is so, perhaps what we call God is not a myth, but the name that we give the one in whom all of this around us is held together. And because we love fiercely and deeply, we recognize how powerful it is. Thus, we must deduce that if the one is all powerful, it must be love, which it operates through. Because we can look at the faces of those we hold dear and see only that which is good and beautiful, we recognize that this one which operates through love must see in each of us only that which is good and beautiful. We know that the truths of those we love are not defined by their experiences, nor opinions others hold about them, nor their accomplishments. We don't need to see proof of achievement or pedigree, nor do we need to know what they believe about themselves. We just love them, right? And so we must accept that this God who operates through love sees us in the same way. We are not the sum of our experiences, our accomplishments, or our baggage. Others' beliefs and opinions about us are insubstantial. They mean nothing other than that someone else thought some thoughts and they threw their ego behind them to let you know. Let me ask you, if we can prove that science can't deny God, then can we also believe that others' opinions do not define us? If we have the capacity to love so powerfully, and if all is part of the one, which is the cosmos and all which it contains, then can we also believe that we are part of that power of love behind it all? That we, each and every one of us, are God's love expressed as us? I have a gift for you in the form of a mirror, a little one. This week, I ask that you keep it with you. You keep it on your nightstand when you sleep, keep it on your person when you're up and around. Whenever you have a moment of doubt, a moment of hesitation, a moment of feeling less than or alone, please take it into your hands, and I want you to think of the face of someone that you love deeply. Then hold on to that feeling of love as you open it and gaze at your own reflection. You have been searching for signs in the stars, in scriptures, in science, but the clearest sign is the one who has loved, lost, and longed to understand it all. That's you. You are the proof of God. You always have been. I'd like us to close with an affirmation. It will be up on the screen, and it will also be handed to you with your mirror. If you would please repeat after me. This week I remember that I am more than my past.
This week I remember that I am more than my past.
I am more than my doubt.
I am more than my doubt.
I am a living expression of divine love.
I am a living expression of divine
and I will see that love
and I will see that love
in myself, in others,
in others,
and in this miraculous, mysterious world.
and in this miraculous, mysterious world.
Thank you.